I killed 12 men before I turned 23. Rode with the Blackwood Gang through New Mexico. Left towns bleeding in our wake. Then I tried to disappear. Built a new life with a new name in Silver Ridge. But the past doesn't stay buried in this territory. It comes back with guns drawn, demanding payment for betrayals you thought were forgotten. Some debts can only be settled in blood. These lands know pain better than joy. Every mark in the sand tells a story, but folks rarely listen. I saw this tale with my own eyes, like the crackle of a fire at night. The shadows of the past don't leave. You'd best listen close. Out here, it's the only way to survive. The desert wind carried secrets through Silver Ridge, like whispers from the dead. It was 1875, and the town clung to the rocky slopes of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains with the desperation of a man hanging from a cliff edge. Silver had been discovered 3 years prior, and the mine still coughed up enough, or to keep hope alive, keep the saloons full, keep men gambling their futures on dreams pulled from the earth in muddy chunks. I went by Thomas Brennan now. Not the name I was born with, not the name on wanted posters gathering dust in marshals' offices from Texas to Colorado. I'd been in Silver Ridge for 8 months, working as a blacksmith, shoeing horses and mending wagon wheels, and keeping my head down so low I could taste the dirt. My forge stood at the edge of town where the buildings thinned into scrubland, a deliberate choice. I wanted to see anyone coming from a distance. The work was honest, and my hands had stopped shaking after the first month. Every morning I woke in my small room above the forge, made coffee that tasted like ash, and told myself this was real, this quiet life, this second chance. The scars on my knuckles had faded from rope burns and gunpowder, replaced by the clean burns of hot metal. Different scars, better ones. Silver Ridge wasn't much to look at. Main Street ran straight as a rifle barrel from the mine entrance to the church at the south end, a wooden structure whose white paint was already peeling under the relentless sun. Between them stood the assayer's office, 2 saloons, the Silver Star and the Lucky Strike, a general store run by a widow named Eleanor Marsh, the town doctor's office, and a boarding house where miners slept 3 to a room. The sheriff's office sat in the center like a crooked tooth, its jail cells visible through barred windows that never seemed to hold anyone for long. Sheriff Wade McRae was younger than me, maybe 26, with a clean-shaven face that hadn't yet learned the lines that violence carves into a man. He wore his badge like it meant something, like law and order could actually take root in this rocky soil. I avoided him when I could. Lawmen have a way of looking at you that makes old sins rise to the surface, no matter how deep you've buried them. The town had rhythm. Miners descended into the earth at dawn, emerged at dusk covered in silver dust that made them look like ghosts. The saloons filled with their wages and emptied their hopes. Fights broke out on Saturday nights, fists and bottles, but rarely guns. Doc Patterson set bones and stitched cuts and delivered babies and buried the men who didn't make it out when tunnels collapsed. It was a life. Not the life I'd imagined in those violent years before, but a life nonetheless. I kept to myself mostly, but you can't live in a small town without becoming part of it. Eleanor Marsh would bring me coffee sometimes, stand in the doorway of my forge watching the sparks fly, asking about my past in the careful way people do when they know you're hiding something, but respect the distance. I told her I came from Missouri, that my family died of fever, that I'd worked mines before learning the trade. All lies, smooth as river stones from repetition. The children were what surprised me most. They'd gather near my forge in the afternoons after the schoolhouse closed, watching me work with wide eyes. I'd let them pump the bellows sometimes, show them how metal bends when it's hot enough, teach them patience. A boy named Samuel, maybe 10 years old with dark hair and gaps in his teeth, reminded me of someone I used to know. Before, when I still had people to lose. 8 months of peace. 8 months of sweat and honest work, and sleeping without dreams of men I'd killed. 8 months of thinking maybe, just maybe, a man could outrun what he'd been. Then Marcus Holloway rode into town. I was working the forge when I saw him, hammer mid-swing. The ring of metal on metal suddenly too loud in my ears. He sat on a gray mare at the far end of Main Street. backlit by the afternoon sun, so that his face was hidden in shadow. But I knew the shape of him. The way he sat in the saddle, slouched but alert, the tilt of his head, the long coat he wore despite the heat. My old partner, the man who'd ridden beside me through 6 years of blood and robbery, the man I'd betrayed when I disappeared in the night 8 months ago with my share of our last take, leaving him and the rest of the Blackwood Gang to face a pursuing posse alone. Marcus didn't move, just sat there on his horse, watching my forge from 100 yards away. The message was clear: I see you, Thomas. Or should I say, I see you, Jack Brennan. My real name hung in the air between us, like smoke from a gun. The hammer slipped from my hand, clanging against the anvil. Samuel looked up at me, confused by my sudden stillness. Mr. Brennan, you all right? I wasn't all right. The past I tried to bury had just dug itself up and was sitting on a horse at the edge of town waiting. I'd known this day might come, had nightmares about it, but nightmares are bearable because you wake up. This was real. Marcus turned his horse slowly and rode toward the Silver Star Saloon. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. I'd come to him eventually, or he'd come to me. Either way, the reckoning had arrived in Silver Ridge, and the quiet life I'd built was already burning at the edges. The sun continued its descent toward the mountains, painting everything in shades of orange and red. Blood colors. The children scattered toward their homes as shadows lengthened. I stood in my forge, surrounded by tools of creation, hammers, tongs, the honest implements of a tradesman, and remembered with perfect clarity the weight of a Colt revolver in my hand. The ghost who tried to become a man was about to learn that some deaths don't take. I waited until the streets emptied before walking to the Silver Star. Twilight had settled over Silver Ridge like a dirty blanket, and the first lamps were being lit in windows. The saloon glowed from within, piano music and rough laughter spilling into the street. I pushed through the doors, and the noise died the way conversations do when a man walks and carrying violence on his shoulders. Marcus sat at a corner table with his back to the wall, old habit. 2 glasses of whiskey waited on the scarred wood. He'd known I'd come. His face looked older than I remembered. New lines carved around his eyes and mouth by wind and sun, and probably things worse than weather. His dark hair was longer, tied back, and a beard shadowed his jaw. But his eyes were the same. Hard green stones that had seen too much and felt too little. "Jack," he said quietly as I approached. "Not Thomas. Jack." My real name dropping like a stone into still water, sending ripples. I sat across from him, ignoring the whiskey. "It's Thomas now." "Is it?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You can change your name, change your trade, grow soft-shoeing horses in this nowhere town. But you're still the man who left his brothers to hang." Nobody hanged. I kept my voice low. The other patrons had returned to their drinks, but ears stay sharp in small towns where gossip is currency. No, but 2 died in the chase. Billy caught 3 bullets in the back. Sam drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande with a posse on his heels. Marcus pushed 1 whiskey across the table. "Drink with me, Jack, to the brothers you left behind." I didn't touch the glass. "I'm done with that life, Marcus. I've paid my debts." His laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Paid your debts? You took $40,000 from our last job and vanished like smoke. We split everything equal, Jack. Always. That was the code, and you broke it. That money bought me out. It bought me a chance to stop being what we were." I leaned forward, keeping my hands visible on the table, away from my hip where no gun hung anymore. "I'm not Jack Brennan. That man died 8 months ago." "Did he?" Marcus stood slowly, his chair scraping against floorboards. He was taller than me by 2 inches, broader in the shoulders, a man built for violence and comfortable with it. "Then you won't mind if I look around this town, see what Thomas Brennan has built here. Maybe meet some of his new friends. The pretty widow who brings you coffee. That boy with the gap-toothed smile who works your bellows." My blood went cold. The threat wasn't subtle. Marcus knew exactly where to cut to make me bleed. I stood too, facing him across the table. We were close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his green eyes, close enough that anyone watching would know this was more than a reunion. "What do you want, Marcus?" "What I want?" He tilted his head, considering. "I want the 40,000 you stole. I want the 6 years we rode together to mean something. I want the men who died because of your cowardice to have their names spoken with respect instead of curses. But mostly, Jack, I want you to remember who you are." "I know who I am." "Do you?" Because the Jack Brennan I knew didn't hide in forges making horseshoes. He didn't play father to orphans or flirt with widows. He was a wolf, Jack. The best damn outlaw in New Mexico. And I need that wolf back. The pieces clicked together. "You're planning something." Marcus smiled fully now, all teeth and no warmth. "The mine payroll. $60,000 in silver certificates, arriving on a stagecoach in 4 days. The Blackwood Gang is riding again, Jack. One last job, and you're going to help us take it." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. Heads turned in the saloon. I lowered my voice. "I'm done, Marcus. Find another partner." "I don't want another partner. I want you. The man who could shoot a rider off a horse at 100 yards. The man who planned every job down to the minute. The man who never hesitated when blood needed spilling." He leaned close, whiskey breath warm on my face. "Help me take the payroll, Jack, or I'll burn this town down around you, starting with everyone you've learned to care about." The threat hung between us like a drawn knife. I saw at his eyes he meant it. Marcus Holloway had always been the cruelest of us, the one who enjoyed the fear in men's eyes when we rode into towns. I told myself we were just taking from banks and stages that could afford the loss. But Marcus had never needed those excuses. He liked the violence for its own sake. "You'd kill innocents to get back at me." "I'd kill 1,000 innocents to remind you what happens when you betray family." His hand moved to his hip where his gun hung low and ready. 4 days, Jack. The mine payroll. You ride with us, help us take it clean, and we disappear. You never see me again. Or you refuse, and I make sure Thomas Brennan loses everything he's tried to build here, just like Jack Brennan lost his brothers. He walked past me toward the door, pausing to drop coins on the bar for the whiskey. At the threshold, he turned back. "I'm staying at the old prospector's cabin north of town. Come at dawn tomorrow. We'll discuss the plan." He smiled again, that empty expression that had no joy in it. "And Jack, come alone. If I see the sheriff or any other law, that widow dies first. Then the boy. Then anyone else you've spoken kindly to since you arrived." Then he was gone, swallowed by the night. I stood in the saloon, surrounded by strangers who'd become neighbors, in a town that had become home, and felt the weight of my past crushing down like a mine collapse. The man I'd been was demanding payment for the man I tried to become, and the price was steeper than any bank I'd ever robbed. I picked up the whiskey Marcus had poured for me and drank it in one burning swallow. It tasted like ash and old sins. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying dust down Main Street and rattling windows. Somewhere a dog howled, long and mournful, like it knew what was coming better than any of us. For days until the payroll arrived. For days to decide if I'd ride with devils again to save the few angels I'd found. For days to discover if redemption was real or just another lie men tell themselves while they wait for the past to catch them. I left the saloon and walked back to my forge under stars that had witnessed every robbery, every bullet, every betrayal. They offered no answers. They never do. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I lay in my room above the forge listening to Silver Ridge breathe, the distant laughter from the saloons, the bark of dogs, the creak of buildings settling as night temperatures dropped. Every sound felt louder, sharper, like my senses knew violence was coming and were preparing for it. At dawn, I saddled my horse. I'd kept it even though a blacksmith has little need for riding. Old habit from years when a fast mount meant the difference between freedom and a noose. The gelding was steady, reliable, wouldn't spook under gunfire. I'd hoped never to test that quality again. The prospector's cabin sat 3 miles north where the foothills climbed toward the mountains. It had been abandoned years ago when the silver vein ran dry, leaving only rotting timber and broken dreams. Perfect place for outlaws to gather. 5 horses were tied outside. Marcus hadn't come alone. I dismounted slowly, hands visible, and walked toward the cabin. The door opened before I reached it. Marcus stood in the frame, backlit by lamplight, looking like the devil welcoming a sinner home. You came. Had a choice. I stepped inside. 4 men sat around a rough table covered with maps and drawings. I recognized them all. Pike Henderson, our demolitions expert, who'd lost 2 fingers to a premature blast, but could still rig any safe to blow. Carlos Ruiz, tracker and scout, who could read signs in rocks and dust like other men read newspapers. Dutch Meyer, the muscle, 6'4" of scar tissue and bad intentions. And Jimmy Blackwood himself, the gang's namesake, older now, grayer, but still radiating the cold authority that had made men follow him into hell for a decade. "The prodigal returns," Jimmy said, his voice gravelly from too many cigars. "Sit down, Jack. We're discussing your part in this dance." I remained standing. I haven't agreed to anything. "You're here. That's agreement enough." Jimmy tapped the map with a scarred finger. "The payroll stage comes through Devil's Pass 4 days from now. Narrow canyon, steep walls, only one way in and out. Perfect ambush point. 6 armed guards, driver, shotgun rider. The silver certificates are in a strongbox, probably 2 locks, possibly trapped." "That's why you need Pike," I said, understanding. "And Carlos to track the route. Make sure the timing's perfect. Dutch to handle the guards if it goes wrong. And you," Marcus added, "to plan it, to find the angles nobody else sees, to turn a decent job into a perfect one." I studied the map. Old habits die hard. My mind was already working the problem, seeing the approaches, calculating timing, identifying weaknesses. Devil's Pass lived up to its name. Sheer rock walls on both sides, the trail barely wide enough for a coach. Guards would be alert there, knowing it was ambush country. But they'd relax once through, thinking the danger passed. "Hit them after the pass," I said before I could stop myself. "Not in it. They'll expect trouble in the canyon. But 2 miles south where the trail widens near Crooked Creek, they'll drop their guard. You set up there with a fake rock slide blocking the path. They stop. You have them in a crossfire before they realize it's an ambush." Silence in the cabin. Then Jimmy smiled. "That's why we need you, Jack. You think 3 moves ahead of everyone else." I didn't say I'd do it. "But you're still here," Marcus said quietly. "Still planning it in your head. The wolf remembers the hunt." I turned to him, anger rising. "You threatened innocence, Marcus. Good people who never hurt anyone. That's not robbery, that's murder. It's leverage." He stood, moving close. "You want to protect your new friends? Help us take the payroll clean. No violence, no shooting. Just the silver certificates and we ride. The town never even knows you were involved. Thomas Brennan stays Thomas Brennan, and Jack Brennan disappears back into whatever grave you dug for him. And if something goes wrong, if guards fight back, then we fight harder. We always do." Jimmy's voice cut through the tension. "Jack, I won't lie to you. This job's dangerous, but we've done worse. Remember Sabrosa? We took that bank with 10 armed men inside and walked out without firing a shot. Remember Tres Cruces? You planned that railroad job. So perfect, we were gone before they knew we'd been there. You're the best I ever rode with. Do this one last time, and I give you my word we're done. You want out, you're out. With my blessing. Your word." I almost laughed. From a man who's broken every commandment twice. "Never broke my word to you, though. Did I?" Jimmy met my eyes. 6 years we rode together. I kept you fed, kept you paid, kept you alive. You owe me, Jack, and this is how you pay. The trap had closed around me perfectly. Refuse, and Marcus would make good on his threats. I knew him well enough to be certain. The widow Eleanor, young Samuel, even Sheriff McCrae, who'd never done anything but try to keep order in a lawless territory. They'd die because I tried to change. But agree, and I'd be Jack Brennan again. The outlaw, the killer, Every moment I'd spent building Thomas Brennan's life would be ash. I need guarantees, I said slowly. No killing unless there's no choice. We take the payroll and ride separate directions. And you never come to Silver Ridge again. Ever. Marcus and Jimmy exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. Agreed, Jimmy said. We do this clean. 60,000 split 5 ways. 12,000 each. Enough to disappear anywhere you want. Enough to buy a real new life. Not this half-existence you're living. Pike pushed paper and pencil across the table. Draw it out. Show us how it works. My hand moved before my mind caught up. Pencil scratching on paper, marking positions, timing, contingencies. The outlaw in me hadn't died. It had just been sleeping. And now it was waking, stretching, remembering how good it felt to be sharp and dangerous instead of bent and hidden. 2 hours later, the plan was complete. I'd mapped every detail, every movement, every escape route. It was perfect. Clean. No one would die if everyone followed the plan. I stood to leave. Marcus caught my arm at the door. Welcome back, brother. I pulled free. I'm not your brother. I'm a hired gun doing a job. Then I'm gone. We'll see. His smile was knowing. Once you taste it again, Jack, the speed, the danger, the rush when everything hangs on your next decision, you'll remember why you could never really leave. I rode back to Silver Ridge as the sun climbed, heating the desert air until it shimmered. I'd made a deal with devils to save angels. The mathematics of it felt wrong somehow, corrupted. But what choice did I have? That night, Eleanor brought coffee to the forge. She stood in the doorway, sunlight behind her making a halo of her dark hair, and smiled that quiet smile that had gotten past my defenses over 8 months of kind mornings. You seemed troubled yesterday, she said. Old friend passed through. Something like that. Trouble. Maybe. Probably. I set down my hammer. Eleanor, if something happened, if I had to leave suddenly, would you look after Samuel? Make sure he finishes school, learns a trade? Her smile faded. Thomas, what's wrong? Just answer. Please. Of course. But, thank you. I turned back to the forge before she could see my face. That's all I needed to know. She left quietly, confused and worried. I'd frightened her, added to my sins. 3 days until the payroll stage reached Devil's Pass. 3 days until Jack Brennan rode again. 3 days until I discovered if a man could commit one more sin to erase 1,000 others, or if evil simply breeds more evil no matter what names we call it. The metal in my forge glowed orange, then white hot, the color of dying sunsets, the color of muzzle flash, the color of the past refusing to stay buried. The next 3 days passed like a fever dream. I worked the forge with mechanical precision, shoeing horses and mending tools while my mind ran through the robbery plan constantly, finding weaknesses, adjusting timing, calculating probabilities. The townsfolk noticed my distraction but attributed it to whatever troubles they imagined I carried. Everyone in Silver Ridge had come from somewhere else, running from something or toward something. Nobody pried too deep. Sheriff McCrae stopped by the forge on the second day. He was younger than me, but carried himself with the careful dignity of someone trying to grow into authority he hadn't fully earned yet. His badge caught the light as he leaned against the doorframe, watching me work. Thomas, he said casually, had some interesting news from the mining office. Payroll's coming through tomorrow. Always makes me nervous. 60,000 in silver certificates. Draws attention from the wrong kind of men. I kept hammering, steady rhythm, not looking up. That's so. Been thinking I might ride out to meet the stage. Extra security. He paused, significant. Could use another gun if you're willing. I know you don't carry, but something tells me you know your way around a weapon. The irony was thick enough to choke on. The sheriff asking Jack Brennan, outlaw, robber killer, to help protect the very payroll I was planning to steal. I'm a blacksmith, sheriff, not a gunfighter. Every man in the West knows how to shoot Thomas. It's the ones who choose not to carry that interest me most. He pushed off the doorframe, prepared to leave. Think about it. We leave at dawn. After he'd gone, I stood in the forge's heat and laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that had no humor in it. The universe had a dark sense of comedy. That evening, I rode out to the cabin one final time. The gang was preparing, checking weapons, studying the maps I'd drawn, packing light for a fast escape. The atmosphere was tense but electric, the night before Christmas anticipation that always preceded a big job. I'd forgotten that feeling, how it made your nerves sing and your senses sharpen until you could hear a man's heartbeat across the room. "Tomorrow," Jimmy said, gathering us around the table. "We ride at dawn, reach the ambush point by noon. Jack's plan puts us 2 miles south of Devil's Pass, where the trail widens. Carlos confirmed the stagecoach passes there between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. Perfect timing. Guards will be tired, hot, thinking the danger's behind them." He looked at each of us in turn. "We do this clean. Pike sets the rock slide, makes it look natural. When they stop, we come out with rifles visible, but not aimed. Jack does the talking. He's got the voice for it, calm, reasonable. We get the strongbox. Pike blows it. We take the certificates and scatter. 6 minutes, start to finish. Nobody dies. Unless they fight." Dutch rumbled. The big man cleaned his rifle with practiced movements, each motion speaking of violence, so casual it had become routine. "Then we fight back," Marcus said coldly. "But only if necessary. Jack's right, we don't need bodies. Bodies bring posses, federal marshals, wanted posters, with our faces plastered from here to California. We're ghosts. We take the money and vanish." I studied them in the lamplight. These men I'd ridden with for 6 years, shared campfires and danger and the peculiar loyalty that binds outlaws together. They were my brothers once. Now they were strangers wearing familiar faces. Or maybe I was the stranger, the one who tried to change and found you can't scrape off your past like mud from boots. "One thing," I said. "After this, we're done. All of us. Jimmy, you said I'm out with your blessing. That goes both ways. After tomorrow, the Blackwood Gang disbands. No more jobs. No more rides. We take the 60,000 and disappear into different directions." Silence. Then Jimmy nodded slowly. "Agreed. I'm getting old for this anyway. Time to find a warm place to drink myself to death in peace." "Speak for yourself," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "But yeah, one last ride. Then ghosts." We shook hands, each in turn, sealing the pact. When I gripped Marcus's hand, his eyes held mine. "After tomorrow, Jack, you're free. Whatever happens next is on you alone." That's all I ever wanted. I rode back to Silver Ridge under stars that had witnessed countless betrayals and wondered if I was committing one more. Betraying the sheriff's trust. Betraying Eleanor's kindness. Betraying the life I tried to build. But if it kept him safe, if it ended Marcus's threats and bought me true freedom, wasn't that worth one more sin? The mathematics of redemption made my head hurt. I spent that final night cleaning a gun I'd kept hidden beneath the floorboards, my old Colt .45, oiled and maintained despite my vow never to touch it again. The metal was cold and heavy in my hand, familiar as my own heartbeat. I loaded 6 rounds, spun the cylinder, felt the weight settle into muscle memory 6 years deep. Thomas Brennan, the blacksmith, had no use for this weapon, but Jack Brennan, the outlaw, couldn't ride without it. At dawn, I saddled my horse and rode north out of town. I didn't look back. Couldn't. If I'd seen Eleanor opening her store, or Samuel walking to school, or the sheriff preparing to ride out to meet the stage, I might have broken, might have confessed everything, begged for help, chosen a different path. But I didn't look back. The desert was beautiful in morning light, harsh and honest in ways people never are. The sun climbed, heating rock and sand until mirages shimmered on the horizon. I rode steadily, eating miles, my mind empty of everything except the job ahead. The gang was waiting at Crooked Creek. Pike had already rigged the rock slide. It looked natural, just enough debris to stop a stage without making the driver suspicious. We took positions, Marcus and Dutch on the east side with rifles, Carlos and Jimmy on the west, me in the center where I'd be visible first. The plan was clean, professional, perfect. We waited. The sun reached its zenith, beating down with the fury of judgment. My throat was dry despite the water in my canteen. My hands were steady. Everything was ready. Then Carlos whistled softly, the signal. The stage was coming. I heard it before I saw it. The rattle of wheels, the thud of hooves, voices calling to horses. Then it appeared around the bend. 6 horses pulling a red Concorde stage, dust rising in its wake. The driver was an older man, weathered and alert. The shotgun rider was younger, nervous, his weapon held too tight. 6 guards flanked the stage on horseback, professional, well-armed, eyes scanning constantly. They saw the rock slide and slowed. Perfect. The driver pulled to a stop 50 feet from the debris, standing up to assess the obstruction. The guards closed in protectively, hands moving toward weapons. That's when I stepped out into the open, hands raised, no weapon visible. "Gentlemen," I called out, voice calm and reasonable. "Nobody needs to die today. We just want the payroll. Give it to us, and you ride away alive. Fight, and some of you won't see tomorrow." The shotgun rider started to raise his weapon. The driver grabbed his arm, stopping him. Smart man. He'd done this before, knew the mathematics. "How many are you?" The driver called back. "Enough," I replied. "The certificates. Nothing else." For a moment, balanced on a knife's edge, it could have gone either way. I saw the driver calculating, saw the guards' horses shifting nervously, saw the shotgun rider's finger on the trigger. Then Sheriff McRae rode around the bend behind the stage. He'd followed them for extra security, just like he'd said. His eyes found mine across the 50 feet of desert, and I watched understanding dawn on his face. Recognition, betrayal, the knowledge that Thomas Brennan was a lie and Jack Brennan was the truth. "Thomas," his voice carried confusion and hurt. "What are you doing?" And in that moment of distraction, everything went to hell. The shotgun rider fired at Marcus's position. Dutch returned fire. Guards drew weapons. The driver went for the rifle beside his seat. And I stood in the center of an exploding storm, watching the clean job become a massacre, knowing my past had just killed my future. Gunfire erupted like thunder tearing the sky apart. The shotgun blast caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Dutch's return fire dropped the shotgun rider from his seat. The guards scattered, seeking cover behind rocks and the stage itself, weapons blazing. I drew my Colt and dove behind a boulder as bullets chewed through the air where I'd been standing. The plan had shattered. Clean was dead. Now it was just survival. "Jack," Jimmy's voice cut through the chaos. "Take the sheriff. He's the only one who knows you." I saw McRae behind the stage, his revolver drawn, but not firing, still processing what was happening. He trusted Thomas Brennan, and Thomas Brennan was pointing a gun at him. Our eyes met across the killing ground. I saw the betrayal in his face turn to resignation. He raised his weapon slowly, steadying it with both hands. A good stance. Proper form. He'd die well, if it came to that. I couldn't do it. Couldn't pull the trigger on a decent man whose only crime was believing I could be decent too. 6 years of killing men who probably deserved it, but not this. Not him. "McRae," I shouted. "Get down. Stay down." He hesitated, confused. That hesitation saved his life, as a bullet meant for him shattered the stage window instead. The fight was going badly. Pike had abandoned his position to help Marcus, leaving the strongbox plan forgotten. Carlos was pinned down by 3 guards with rifles. Dutch was reloading, exposed, and a guard was drawing a bead on him. I made a choice. Probably the wrong one. Definitely the damning one. I shot the guard aiming at Dutch. Center mass, clean kill. The man dropped. Then I shot another guard moving to flank Carlos. Shoulder wound. He'd live, but he was out of the fight. I was protecting the men who'd threatened innocents. Killing to save killers. Every shot was another nail in Thomas Brennan's coffin. The driver had retrieved his rifle and was firing methodically at Jimmy's position. Good shots. Professional. Jimmy was trapped, couldn't return fire without exposing himself. Pike was trying to reach the strongbox, but couldn't get close enough without being cut down. "We need to go," Marcus shouted, blood staining his shirt. Forget the payroll. We go now. But Dutch wasn't listening. The big man had gone into his blood rage, the state where he stopped being human and became pure violence. He charged the stage, roaring, firing both revolvers. He took a bullet to the leg, another to his side, but he didn't stop. He reached the driver and pistol-whipped him unconscious. Then he turned on the guards. It was butchery. Dutch was dying. Had to be, with those wounds, but he was taking as many men with him as he could before he fell. 2 guards went down before a third shot him through the chest. Dutch staggered, laughed, and shot the 3rd guard in the face before collapsing. The sudden silence after Dutch fell was deafening. Then smoke drifted through the canyon like fog. Bodies lay in the dust. The shotgun rider, 3 guards. Dutch's massive form sprawled beside the stage wheel. The remaining guards were wounded or hiding, their will to fight broken by the carnage. I stood from cover, weapon raised, scanning for threats. My ears rang. My hands shook with adrenaline. This wasn't clean. This was hell. Jack, Jimmy's voice, tired and old. Get the box. Finish it. Pike was already at the stage, his damaged hands working the strongbox locks. He had it open in seconds, professional to the end. Silver certificates spilled out. $60,000 in paper that men had just died for. McCrae stepped out from behind the stage, his revolver aimed at my chest. 20 feet separated us. Point-blank range. He couldn't miss, and neither could I. We stood facing each other while the desert wind carried away the gun smoke and brought the smell of blood. Drop it, Thomas. Or Jack. Whoever you are. His voice was steady despite everything. It's over. It was over before it started. I said quietly. I never wanted this, McCrae. Then why? Why throw away what you'd built? You had a life here. People cared about you. Because the past doesn't let go. Because I thought one more sin could erase 1,000. Because I was wrong about everything. I kept my gun pointed at him, but couldn't pull the trigger. I'm sorry, for whatever that's worth. It's worth nothing to those men dying in the dirt. He steadied his aim. Last chance. Dropped the gun. Marcus appeared behind McCrae, his Colt pressed to the back of the sheriff's head. Drop yours, lawman, or I paint this desert with your brains. Time stopped. McCrae's eyes held mine, asking a silent question. Was I still a man worth saving, or had Jack Brennan killed Thomas Brennan completely? Marcus, no. I kept my voice calm. Let him go. After he saw everything? After he can identify us all? Are you insane? Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. He dies, Jack. That was always how this had to end. No. I lowered my gun. Killing him makes us murderers, not robbers. We got the payroll. We go now, and maybe he can't prove anything. Maybe we're still just ghosts. But you put a bullet in a lawman's head, and they'll hunt us to the ends of the earth. They'll hunt us anyway. Marcus's voice rose, strained. He knows your face. He knows the name you were using. That trail leads back to all of us. Then let it. I'm done running. I holstered my weapon. McCrae, take your wounded and go. Tell them outlaws hit the stage. You fought. Men died. But you survived. Don't mention Thomas Brennan. Don't mention Silver Ridge. Just forget I was ever there. I can't do that, McCrae said quietly. I swore an oath. Oaths are flexible when men are pointing guns at your head. Marcus snarled. Last chance, lawman. Walk away, or I end you. McCrae looked at me one final time. In his eyes, I saw the man I could have been. Someone who kept promises, followed rules, tried to hold back chaos with nothing but conviction and a cheap tin badge. Someone better than I'd ever be. I trusted you, Thomas. I know. That was your mistake. Marcus hit him with the gun barrel, not killing blow. Just hard enough to drop him unconscious. The sheriff crumpled to the dust, bleeding from a scalp wound, but breathing. Let's go, Jimmy called. He gathered the certificates, stuffed them into saddlebags, before more trouble arrives. We mounted and rode hard, leaving the massacre behind. Behind us lay Dutch's body, for dead guards, a wounded driver and sheriff, and the shattered remains of Thomas Brennan's attempt at redemption. Ahead lay what? More running, more hiding. The same tired cycle of sin and penance that never ended. We rode in silence for hours, putting miles between ourselves and the ambush site. When we finally stopped to rest the horses, Marcus pulled his bloody shirt away to examine his shoulder wound. Pike was shaking. The violence had gotten to him. The first man I'd ever seen crack from what we did. Split the money, I said flatly. Then we separate. That was the deal. The deal changed when it went wrong, Marcus replied. Now we need to stay together, at least until we're clear of the territory. No, we split now. I'm done. Done. Marcus stood, wincing from his wound. You killed for us today, Jack. Shot men to protect us. You can't walk away from that. Blood binds tighter than any oath. He was right. I'd made my choice during the fight. Chosen the devils I knew over the law I'd betrayed. That choice would follow me everywhere, another ghost I couldn't shake. We divided the certificates in tense silence, 12,000 each. Blood money that had cost 6 lives and my soul. I stuffed mine into my saddlebag without counting. Where will you go? Jimmy asked. Does it matter? Every town is the same. Every name is temporary. Every life is a lie waiting to be exposed. I mounted my horse. Stay away from Silver Ridge. That's my only condition. Whatever happens to me, that town stays safe. Agreed, Marcus said, though I don't know why you care. They'll hate you when they find out the truth. Probably, but hate is clean. At least they'll know who to point it at. I rode east toward the setting sun, alone again, carrying wealth I hadn't earned and couldn't spend without remembering how I'd gotten it. Behind me, the Blackwood Gang scattered into the desert like smoke. Ahead lay more running, more names, more towns where I'd try and fail to be someone else. The desert didn't care. It had witnessed 10,000 tragedies and would witness 10,000 more. I was just another grain of sand in the vastness, another man who thought he could change what he was and learned too late that some stains go too deep to wash away. Blood in the dust. That's all any of us leave behind. 3 weeks later, I rode back to Silver Ridge in the dead of night. I couldn't have explained why even if someone had asked. Maybe I needed to see what I destroyed. Maybe I needed to face what I'd become. Or maybe I was just tired of running and wanted one place to finally stop, even if that stopping was permanent. The town was dark, quiet, sleeping the way honest places do when decent people have closed their shops and gone to bed with clear consciences. I tied my horse at the edge and walked Main Street like a ghost haunting its own grave. My forge stood empty, cold. Someone had closed the doors, but they hadn't locked them. Small town trust that seemed impossibly naive now. Inside, tools hung on walls where I'd placed them. The anvil sat where I'd worked metal into useful shapes. 8 months of labor, of sweat, of trying to create instead of destroy. All of it meaningless now. A wanted poster was nailed to the forge wall. Someone had put it there deliberately, right above the anvil. I lifted my lantern to read it. Jack Brennan, wanted for robbery and murder. $5,000 reward. Known to use the alias Thomas Brennan. Dangerous. Approach with caution. The sketch was crude but recognizable. My face stared back at me, rendered in harsh black lines. Dangerous. That's what I'd become again. What I'd always been under the thin veneer of Thomas. I expected you'd come back. I spun, hand dropping to my gun. Sheriff McRae stood in the doorway, bandage wrapped around his head where Marcus had struck him, his own weapon drawn and steady. Easy, he said. If I'd wanted to arrest you, I'd have brought deputies. We're just talking. Talking. I kept my hand near my Colt. About how I betrayed you. Robbed the payroll. Got 4 men killed. 6. 2 more died from their wounds. His voice was flat, emotionless. The kind of voice men use when emotions would break them. The driver survived. So did 2 guards. They told me everything. About the ambush. The fight. The man who called himself Jack and gave orders. The one who looked exactly like Thomas Brennan. Then you know what I am. I know what you were. I'm still figuring out what you are now. He stepped into the forge, close enough that I could see the pain in his eyes. Not from his physical wound, but from something deeper. You had a chance to kill me, Jack, when your partner had me dead to rights, but you stopped him. Why? Does it matter? It does to me. I've been a lawman 3 years. Know what I learned? Bad men don't hesitate. When they have a chance to eliminate a witness, they take it. But you didn't. Even after everything, even knee-deep in blood and stolen money, you couldn't pull that trigger. Maybe I'm just a coward. Maybe. Or maybe Thomas Brennan wasn't entirely a lie. McCrae holstered his weapon, a gesture of trust one didn't deserve. Eleanor asked about you. So did Samuel. I told them you'd left suddenly. Family emergency. They're hurt, but they don't know the truth. Nobody in Silver Ridge knows except me. I stared at him. Why would you protect me? I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting them. They cared about Thomas Brennan. They don't need to know he was a fiction. Let them keep the good memory instead of learning their blacksmith was an outlaw who robbed and killed for 6 years. The kindness was worse than judgment. I could have handled anger, accusations, even violence. But this quiet mercy from a man I'd betrayed cut deeper than any knife. The money, I said. The certificates I took. They're in my saddlebag. All 12,000. I haven't spent a dollar. I pulled the thick bundle from my coat, dropped it on the anvil. Make sure the mining company gets it back. It won't resurrect the dead, but at least it's something. McCrae studied the money, then me. This is a confession. I take this, and I have to arrest you. I know. You're willing to hang for a crime you're trying to make right. I'm willing to stop running. The words came out tired, empty. 6 years of names and lies and towns I can't stay in. I'm exhausted, McCrae. If hanging ends it, maybe that's what I deserve. He picked up the money slowly, weighing it, weighing me. The silence stretched until I could hear my own heartbeat, loud in the empty forge. No, he said finally. No, I'm not arresting you, Jack. And I'm not taking the money. You're going to take it, ride to Sacramento, and give it to the Miners' Benevolent Fund. They help families of men killed in mining accidents. Men like the guards who died because of that robbery. You're going to give them every dollar, anonymously. Then you're going to disappear. Not as Jack Brennan or Thomas Brennan, but as whoever you become next. And maybe, if you're lucky and God's feeling generous, that man will be better than the ones who came before. I couldn't speak. The mercy was incomprehensible. I'm a lawman, McCrae continued. My job is justice, not vengeance. Hanging you brings back none of the dead. But you walking away with the burden of trying to be better, that's worth more than a noose. At least to me. Why? The word came out broken. Why show me this kindness? Because someone showed it to me once, when I was young and stupid and had made mistakes that should have ruined my life. An old marshal gave me a choice, jail or a badge. Said sometimes the best lawmen are the ones who've seen darkness and chosen light anyway. I didn't believe him then, but I'm trying to now. He moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Don't come back here, Jack. Not ever. Let Thomas Brennan stay dead, but let him die having done one good thing with that blood money, helping the families destroyed by men like Jack Brennan. He was gone before I could respond, swallowed by the darkness, leaving me alone with a fortune and stolen money and a choice I didn't deserve to make. I stood in the forge for a long time, surrounded by tools I'd never touch again, in a life I'd never reclaim. The wanted poster stared at me from the wall. Dangerous. Approach with caution. But McCrae had approached, and he'd shown mercy. I took the money and left Silver Ridge before dawn, riding west toward Sacramento, toward whatever came next. The certificates felt heavy in my saddlebag, heavier than gold, weighted with the lives they'd cost. 2 weeks later, I walked into the Miners' Benevolent Fund office and donated $12,000 anonymously. The clerk was stunned, suspicious, asking questions I didn't answer. I just left the money and walked out. The weight didn't disappear. The dead didn't resurrect. But something shifted, not redemption maybe, a small step away from damnation. One good act to balance against 1,000 sins. The mathematics still didn't work out, but at least I was trying to solve the equation instead of running from it. I left California and drifted north. Took a new name, my fourth or fifth, I'd lost count. Found work on a ranch near the Oregon border. The owner never asked about my past, just judged me by how well I could break horses and mend fences. I was good at both. Sometimes at night I'd dream of Silver Ridge, of Eleanor's quiet smile, of Samuel pumping the bellows, his gap-toothed grin lighting up his face, of a forge where I'd made things instead of destroying them. Those dreams hurt worse than nightmares. I'd wake up in Oregon under different stars, with different hands, scarred from work instead of gunpowder, not redeemed, not forgiven, but trying, day by day, hour by hour, trying to be something other than the sum of my sins. The wanted posters stayed up for 2 years before they faded, replaced by newer criminals, fresher sins. Jack Brennan became a ghost story, a name whispered in saloons, but with no face attached. Thomas Brennan disappeared entirely, remembered by a handful of people in a silver mining town as a decent blacksmith who'd left suddenly and never returned. And me, I became someone new, someone whose name doesn't matter because it'll change again eventually. A ghost who works honest jobs and sends money anonymously to families destroyed by outlaws. It's not redemption, but it's the closest I'll ever get. The desert wind still blows through my dreams sometimes, carrying the smell of dust and blood and burning metal, carrying the ghosts of men I killed and men I saved and the man I tried to be. They follow me everywhere, those ghosts. But at least now, when I look in mirrors, I can meet my own eyes. At least now I'm trying. That's all any of us can do in the end. Keep trying. Keep moving forward. Keep hoping that somewhere ahead there's a place where the past weighs a little less and the future holds something besides more running. I haven't found it yet, but I'm still looking. And maybe that's enough. See you around, my friend. I've got another story for you.